Good afternoon. This is Jack Branch coming to you out of Covington, Louisiana. And today we have a very special guest, an attorney. And I know when I mention that word, many of you might be like, an attorney. But I think you're going to be very entertained and educated by my guest today. This is the Healthy Wealth Show. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday. And really the goal is to help people navigate through their financial worlds as well as their health worlds through the valleys of in life. And I'm very excited today to interview a gentleman that has been practicing law for some time, John Stevens. He's the founder of John Stevens Law Firm. He actually went to LSU undergrad, earned a bachelor's in English and an emphasis in creative writing. At LSU, he was on the dean's list. Unlike me, I was on the Dean Wormer list. He was a recipient of the LSU Centennial Award and was a recipient of the Topps Honors Award. John was also an active member in Kappa Sig fraternity, so he's definitely a Greek man where he served as scholarship chair. John earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Loyola University in New Orleans College of Law. While at Loyola, John earned the Law Excellence Award multiple times for his performance in torts, regulation of the sports industry, and the Louisiana Bar seminar. Goodness. Sorry, I had somebody dialing in there. Thought I had that turned off. Nothing like live.
Phone's already ringing off the hooks, man.
You can't hang that. So prior to really opening up his own law firm, he served as in-house counsel for a local Covington business where he handled contractual matters, corporate compliance, healthcare law, and business formation and transactions. He practiced with Ron A. Austin and Associates, LLC, in Harvey, Louisiana, where he handled civil litigation matters, class action, estate, succession, and construction law matters. He's admitted to practice law in Louisiana state courts, U.S. federal courts in Louisiana, and he's a notary. So I want to introduce to you a good friend and another colleague in the industry, my friend John Stevens. How's it going, John?
It's going great, Jack. I really appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to cleansing the reputation of us lawyers out here. Hopefully we'll get you some good education and people won't be so skeptical of what it is we might do.
I run in the financial world, I run into a lot of people when I ask them the question of, do you have an estate plan or do you have a will? And a lot of them say no, when in fact they really do have an estate plan, even though they formally haven't written that. And I do want to spend some time today, kind of going through the myths about lawyers, really talking about, some intricacies in the state of Louisiana as it relates to estate work. And then kind of a game plan of why people really want to take action coming into the new year. So really the myths, a lot of people believe is that an attorney, especially to do wills or powers of attorney and this kind of work, are going to be very expensive, Can you kind of debunk that myth as it relates to saying something's expensive, if you will?
Certainly. I think, right, the predisposition most people have is that anytime a lawyer is involved, you're going to be spending a small fortune. But the documents necessary for one of your general estate plans that for an estate that's not outrageous, right? Which is most of us have just normal estates that we need to tidy up. It is not very expensive, and it's cost effective in that if you don't have it, you're going to be spending money, or your estate's going to be spending a lot more money on the back end than they would have had you had an estate plan. So really, it rings true with the an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure mentality, right? So you can get a good estate plan put together for relatively inexpensive. It's just all based on what you desire. If you do run into someone who might have some type of outrageous pricing, I promise you there are attorneys out there who understand the reasonableness of putting one in place and get one together for people and can do it for a good price.
And I think, cost is all a relative scenario. What does it cost if you don't take care of things on the front end? Value versus cost, I guess. And so often I've had other lawyers here in New Orleans that, simple couple with a couple kids working a job, and some of the stuff these big firms charge was a little astronomical. And I know in talking to you and getting to know you, you've really made it your purpose to help individuals where they are and meet them where they are and do some immediate planning. And then if you need to build on that in the future, you can do so. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of like I said, generally you're going to see the type of estate that, hey, you put something small in place or simple in place. It doesn't have to be too complex. And if the dynamics of your estate change, then you can amend that accordingly. And, given the new tax reforms and the some of the rates, federal exemption rates and things like that as far as taxes go, the large majority of Americans, and particularly people in Louisiana, as far as our civil code system goes, are going to be in the simple estate plan bracket or area. So, you start small, you get something simple in place. We're not worried about the $12 million thresholds that, that's reserved to a fraction of the population. And again, it's the value of having something even simple in place, and something in place that you want, that dictates the transfer of your estate per your wishes, as opposed to the government's wishes, which if you don't have an estate plan, that's who's going to direct where your stuff goes. The value up front, pricing wise, things like that, it really, again, it's a drop in the bucket comparatively to what you could be spending on the back end.
Yeah, so why isn't estate planning important, really? A lot of people think, well, man, I don't have a lot of assets, or I don't have, tens of millions of dollars. So maybe you could kind of share why it is important, because I've run into some stories in the past where husband and wife didn't have things done, and then it creates a bunch of problems because one of them was in Greece, husband and wife died, and, a bunch of young kids, and then the grandparents had to come in and basically run the show. So obviously a will you're only going to use one time, but there's other things, powers of attorney and things. Share with us why this estate plan is so crucial.
Well, so as far as, we'll start with, probably the will aspect of things, right? There are default rules that have been legislated, right? So the government has set into place certain default rules that are going to come into effect if you do not have a will that articulates how you want things to go. So the importance, first of all, right, you've worked hard, the majority of your life acquiring your assets, building your estate. Really, the last thing you want to happen is for something to happen to you, and your estate is going to be transferred in accordance with the way that you don't want it to be. And a lot of people presume, let's say husband and wife, been married a long time. The presumption might be, we run into the presumption a lot when clients come in and say, well, everything's going to my wife, right, anyway. Why do I need a will? Well, it doesn't, though. Obviously, we're in a community property state, which we might touch on in a little bit. But while your spouse might get a certain portion of what y'all acquired together, the default rule is such that she's not going to get the other part of it, right? And a lot of people's intentions are to make sure that their spouse is taken care of if something were to happen to them. So again, the way the default rules are constructed, that doesn't necessarily meet the expectations that one would have to say, again, it's my understanding that, my wife's going to get everything. I'm married to her. It's all hers anyway, not unless it's in writing. Now, you also run into other issues. These days we see a lot of blended families, right? People perhaps on their second marriages, or they have children from prior marriages and they get remarried. There can be some tensions, involved in those types of dynamics. Not always, but there can be. And again, if you want your spouse at the time you pass to be taken care of, well, then you've got even a little more elevated issues with how the default rules are structured in regard to maybe stepchildren, things like that. And so, you want to keep everything copacetic, again, with how your intentions are construed in your mind, how you want things to go. Now, outside of the will, you have things like powers of attorney, right? Which we call
those, isn't there? I mean, there's a general power of attorney and there's a health care. Maybe you can kind of talk why those two are very crucial.
Yeah, and because we're in Napoleonic code, right? We have fancy words for everything. We call powers of attorney acts of procuration. Sometimes you'll see called a certain type of mandate. The general, and for purposes of our conversation, and like you hear it in pretty much everyday lingo, it's going to be called power of attorney. So your general power of attorney, right, is going to address the business administrative parts of your life, right? Everything from paying your bills, your electricity bills, transactions with the bank, paying taxes, running any type of business you might have, things like that. Also representing, let's say something happens to me. My wife she's the agent with the authority under my power of attorney. If for some reason I had some type of right or interest in a judicial proceeding, she would be the one to represent me in that under the general power of attorney. So a good way to address everything with the general power of attorney, because Louisiana requires certain authorities to be specifically listed in the power of attorney. We generally kind of start with throwing in the kitchen sink, everything in the kitchen sink, then talk to the client, okay, would you want this to be included or not? We can remove it. And you tailor your power of attorney to fit, exactly what the client wants. Now, you mentioned the special medical power of attorney, and that's pretty self-explanatory, right? But what it is, it gives a person an authority to make medical decisions in the event that the principal, the person who's creating the power of attorney, right, is unable to do so. I have to remind people often, this power of attorney that you give someone the authority to act under, it's not going to trump your own, wishes, right, or your volition. It only comes in place when you're unable, for whatever reason, to act or to make decisions. So let's say something happens to you, you're in the hospital, unconscious, something like that, right? The special medical power of attorney is going to allow that person who you designate as the agent to make some decisions on your behalf. Now, you always got to remember, obviously, we have professional doctors who know what they're doing, right, with this person, and make sure that the best treatment gets done. But lacking a power of attorney like that, you'd be in a situation where it's difficult maybe to get the care that you might need as quickly as possible if you don't have someone there to make those decisions for you, or to give the instructions to the hospital, or maybe they want to remove you from a hospital and bring you to another place. There's a lot of scenarios where it could be significantly meaningful to a person's health. So certainly advisable. And those types of documents are again, as long as you have a good, clear conversation with the client, you can get them what they want, and it's not cost prohibitive. It's a very cost effective document.
So how do we get people away from the Home Depot philosophy of I'll go online and go to one of these websites like LegalZoom?
Right.
They've got something all populated, and they're saying, well, man, I can just do that. It's easier. How do you get people over that hurdle to not be a do-it-yourself or a lawyer? And obviously you went to school for many years to learn this, and really entrust a counselor like yourself to really help you through this stuff versus trying to do it yourself.
Right. Well, there's a good saying: people don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
So the presumption, if it's just I'll write it down or I'll get on LegalZoom, right? There have been cases in Louisiana, because we have very strict requirements of form for these documents. Okay. Certain language has to be incorporated, certain, signatures, things like that. There is very specific in Louisiana. In our civil law, right, is different from all the other states, which are common law, which LegalZoom is really more tailored to common law if it's effective, really at all. There have been cases in Louisiana where people have executed wills off of LegalZoom, and courts have stated that the entirety of the will is invalid because it didn't meet form requirements, except for the spots where the person might have written, handwritten a couple things. Because in some circumstances that can suffice for a valid disposition of property. But, so effectively it was useless, right? So, and you end up spending several $100s probably anywhere at LegalZoom, which is, comparatively, you're paying a significant amount of money, right, for a risk that you could entirely abate or avoid by going to an attorney who knows what they do and will take care of you. It's just a matter of being fair to the client, really, frankly, and educating them. Because again, they don't know what they don't know. They think they can just shop online for what they need, and it can have devastating effects, really.
And obviously you do other law too, but I thought, to bring you on at this time of the year, people are coming into first of the year. They're thinking about New Year's resolutions. A lot of people, especially my clients, if you're watching, I've been on you for years, to get with an attorney, get these documents done, because you have a will. It's just the state of Louisiana or the given state you live in that's going to dictate how things proceed. And not just if you die, as he's mentioned, but just healthcare initiatives. I mean, a myriad of things, being able to handle financial affairs. I mean, banks can't deal with folks unless you are able to operate on their behalf, and so there's this maze that can happen. So I would encourage you to reach out to John. John, although has that baby face, young man, and he definitely has a lot of experience in working with complex stuff, as well as meeting people with where they are. And I know right now he's working with a client that I referred to him in this elder care law, and dealing with it in a situation. Really won't go into the details, but, there's a growing pressure, if you will, with people living longer and longer and longer, that, the parents and or blended families and or step kids will handle things in a way that is above board. And can you talk to that just generically, not specifically, but generically about what you're seeing in the way of people getting older? I mean, sometimes things not thinking clearly, and the emotions around losing the spouse or somebody having to go into a facility. I mean, because that's really the pressure, is people are living longer and longer and longer, so we don't have people checking out as young as they used to, and what those scenarios can involve, and why it's good to have representation.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the just not absurd, but just a crazy thing to think about is the cost of long-term care these days. It's just skyrocketed. I think the average for 2017, I want to say, was $5,000 a month, and I think they've increased that as upwards towards $6,000 a month if you're looking to go into a nursing home, right? And so, and you touch on a couple things, but how that relates to making sure that you can be as best prepared as possible. There are different avenues. All right, for having your long-term care, because, like you said, that we're living longer, medicine is getting more effective, but you have to plan adequately for the situation where, okay, if this asset is not exempt, let's say, for instance, you don't have the liquid savings, or you don't have perhaps maybe a life insurance or some type of long-term care insurance policy in place, you may need to try to qualify for Medicaid, right, which is a government program that will pay a significant amount, if not the entirety of your long-term care, provided that you qualify, right? And to be eligible, you have to talk to an attorney because there are assets that are exempt, undoubtedly. But the threshold for qualifying is very low. You cannot have much at all, right?
And there's a lot of folks who try to go broke in order to get Medicaid benefits, which is a big red flag, right? I mean, I see a lot of these folks that, are actually doing strategies and showing people how to qualify. But
right.
Medicaid look back on those things and come back and say, hey, you were in essence defrauding the government. So
Right. You've got the 5-year look back in Louisiana, which is extensive, needless to say. Such that anything you divest yourself of, right, or alienate within 5 years of trying to apply for Medicaid, they're going to count that against you, right? Depending on maybe what the asset is, but they're going to presume that, hey, if you donated this $50,000 piece of property 3 years ago, we're going to assume that you have $50,000 in the bank to pay for about 10 months worth of your treatment, because if we're doing 50,000 divided by 5,000 a month, using that as the average. And when in fact, if you donate it to your daughter or your son, they didn't give you $50,000. So you don't have the $50,000 to take care of yourself and to spend down to where you qualify. So a lot of the Medicaid planning, long-term care planning, it has to do, it does entail some foresight, some serious considerations and some serious foresight into, what it is you have, what is the best option for you as far as planning for that, and making sure in the meantime you're still taken care of, right? You don't want to get rid of all your stuff and then you don't have a nickel or a dime to live on, just because you think maybe in 5 years you might have to go to a nursing facility. So again,
all that has changed so much. The long-term care insurance market was way underpriced versus what they thought they would realize. So a lot of the carriers have gotten out of that business. Now the life insurance companies have really figured out how, like you said, using life insurance and riders on those to provide those benefits if and when they need it versus let me put money in and hope I use long-term care. It's always been a big struggle for a lot of people is, what if I don't need it? What if I check out earlier, I'm just healthy and live a great life and don't use it? So there is maneuvers and some strategies that you can deploy. And it's really crucial to get advice from both ends, the financial end. I can help you or my colleagues, and then an attorney to make sure that the documents, work with one another. I know a lot of businesses don't have disability buyout, or what happens if something happens to one of the partners and, he's disabled. Yeah, you can, maybe use some of the money out of the operation for a little while, but it's really good to have a disability buyout agreement that you could have an agreement with a company that if something happens to one of the partners, that could be facilitated. So these are all things that, really as you're coming into the new year and you've been saying, man, I need to do a will. Man, I got to do this. Man, I got to do that. You just got to take action. And John's downtown Covington. You can reach him at 985-888-9908. He's down on Columbia Street, historic Covington, near the Southern Hotel in that area. And tell somebody what that would look like on an initial meeting with you, where it wouldn't be overwhelming and it would be just getting to know you, and how simple it really would be to get wills and stuff moving with you.
Absolutely. First and foremost, we do free consultations, free initial consultations, because it is about, hey, look, I want to sit down with you or the both of you or whomever might be there and say, hey, what are your goals? All right, first and foremost. And some people might not be able to articulate that because, again, they don't know, and really they have no reason to know, because a lot of it's some nuanced type of information. But we'll figure out what the goals are. How do you want your plan to best reflect your intentions, right? We'll just kind of review dynamics of the estate, assets. If there's anything specific you want going to specific people, obviously that's a fundamental aspect of wills. All right, once we cover that, what's going to happen to you when you pass, we got that figured out. With always knowing that in the event you want to amend it, we can certainly do so. That can be done. And then again, you look at the situations. Okay, if something were to happen to me, and for whatever reason I wasn't able to administer financial or those type of aspects of your life, or the health aspect, right? Let's put some things in place some simple documentation that will allow for your best well-being, right? And that brings up another point. I mean, and I forgot to mention, there's a process in Louisiana called interdiction, right? So let's say you don't have a healthcare power of attorney, okay, and something happens to you, and you are incapacitated such that you can't take care of yourself, okay? Well, the only other recourse, if there is no power of attorneys in place, is to go to the court and go through the interdiction process, which is extremely laborious, is costly, and it's very difficult and emotionally tolling for families. So, I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars later, an individual who can't take care of themselves is essentially stripped of their rights in favor of someone else. But you can avoid that, right? So again, we have those types of discussions, and it's not. No one sits around thinking, I can't wait to talk to my lawyer about when I die. Yeah, that's the truth. But the truth is also that at some point, we do move on to the next place, and so it's a frank conversation, but I tend to be long-winded, so I'll talk their ear off. If they want to talk my ear off, we can hang out for a while and do that. But at the end of the day, we'll get to the bottom of what they want, what their intentions are, and we can get that accomplished, certainly.
Well, and the key here is really the level of care, and I know there's a lot of myths around, how many, just bad lawyer jokes and stuff, but until you really need a lawyer, you don't realize how valuable they are. And as John said, I mean, you can, pay now or pay later exponentially. So usually there is not a huge amount of cost by taking action and getting things put in place, because you'll end up spending an infinite amount more down the road. So again, definitely, if you're following this show, check John's website out. I tagged him on this stream, and again, I hope you found this very educational. John's a great lawyer. I've referred him clients, and all the people call back, and they're like, wow, this guy is actually personable. He seems to care. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't send you to him if he didn't. So anything in closing that you'd like to share, John, before we wrap up here?
Man, I guess so you mentioned lawyer jokes. I heard this one the other day. Why do they bury lawyers 9 feet down instead of 6 feet?
I don't know.
Because deep down, they're actually good people. Yeah. But like you said, you don't know, you don't realize that, the good that we can do. There are the stereotypes out there. And sometimes you need to have an aggressive lawyer who's going to stick in your corner, fight for you. And that might be where the reputation comes from. But, if that situation arises, you certainly want to have someone good in your corner. I'd be happy to meet with anyone. Thank you, Jack, so very much. Honestly, it's been a pleasure.
It's always good to know you and have good colleagues in this industry. You can't do it all. I can't be a lawyer, be a CPA, be a financial guy, manage money, do the insurance. You gotta figure out to have good people in your corner. And definitely John's that good person that can help you as it relates to this show with your estate plan. So definitely reach out to him. Again, I'll tag his number in this post, but it's 985-888-9908. Again, 985-888-9908. And I know he can't promote himself. However, I will, because he continues to show and deliver way above what he's charging. So make it the New Year resolution that you get your estate plan done. And if you're one of my clients, I'm definitely going to be tagging you on this post that I've been after you to get your wills done. And definitely start the new year out. We're coming into the Christmas season, and definitely take some time where you will reflect. We will not do a Healthy Wealth show, obviously, on Tuesday for obvious reasons, but take the time to enjoy this time of the year with your family and loved ones and reflect on the real reason for the season. And that's not just, overindulging in gift giving or consumerism, but really reflecting on why this time of the year is so important. So find some quiet time, find some reflection, look at the things that went great this year, the things that maybe didn't go so great, and then start off next year in a way that you look at things totally different. And next Thursday, we'll be back with a new guest, I think David Gwynn out of the Carolinas, that does some life coaching with various individuals. It's going to talk to us about how to quiet your mind. and how to really live in that place of be still and know that I'm God. I mean, we all have a bunch of stuff in our heads, and sometimes we just got to dump it. So thank you again, John, and thank you for tuning into this show. And you guys have an awesome holiday season.
That's right. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.